coach, life coach, life on life's terms coach. Tonight we're going to talk about stop punishing people. I did a video 6 years ago about stopping punishing adults when adults punish adults. It talked about this. And so sometimes when I'm working with people, when we have emotional immaturity, when our wounds, the inner child is running the show. Hey, thank you. When the inner child, hello, five elements, infinity. So the emotional immaturity. Hey, Hard Rock, how are you doing this evening? Thank y'all for being here. We're going to talk about, forgiveness and compassion and communication because, first off, a lot of people say, Kim, we are talking about communication tonight. You asked me to talk about communication, but we're also talking about forgiveness and healing through forgiveness, compassion, and communication. So here we are, because how are we going to forgive anybody without communicating? So that's what I was about to say is that oftentimes people say, oh, I forgive them. I forgive this. And we intellectualize it, right? So it's intellectualized, but we don't know we're intellectualizing it. Oh, I know, darling. I know. You ain't the only one. Because that's been the topic this week. That's why I threw forgiveness and compassion in. Because a lot of times we say and I've done it. I've done this because I wouldn't be able to talk about these things like I do if I didn't know what I'm talking about. I know because I've done this too. So I used to say, and I have done this myself, I forgive them intellectually. I did forgive them, but then let some little something come up, and then it's like, and then I'm back at where I was because forgiveness doesn't mean that we heal. It's early morning. All right. Very good, five elements. I'm glad. So, yeah, I think you're like 12 and a half hours difference or something like that. I'm not sure. I can't remember what I calculated that to. So there's intellectual forgiveness comes in different levels and layers because sometimes when we're talking about those inner childhood wounds, they didn't just happen a one and done. Oh, no, they came in different levels and layers too. When we're healing with addiction recovery, we say progress, not perfection. And I've said that a couple of times this week. I saw that. I'm so proud of Pam. So forgiveness comes at different levels and layers, and it is, Oh yeah, this week, there's a few people that talked about forgiveness. And so we say we forgive people, and I've done it too, but then it's like, no, I'm going to give them the business as soon as something happens. Hello, Shivana Sharma. So then as soon as something happens again, it's that same pain again because we only did it intellectually. This means I just said I'm forgiving somebody, but forgiveness is peeling that onion of pain. It's peeling the onion of pain because sometimes there's a person in our life that just keeps doing the trigger. There's a trigger that we have to the pain. And a lot of us haven't learned to realize what is the trigger. So we start punishing people. We want one thing. So we want to be held. We want to feel secure. We want to feel, I gave hubby the business. He may need you. Uh-oh. Were you passive aggressive? That's what we're going to talk about, passive aggressiveness here this evening. Aw. So yeah, there's a few people that I spoke with this week that say if somebody wants intimacy, but they're pushing somebody away. This is a mixed message. Somebody wants healing, but again, they're pushing somebody away. I love you. So, and I appreciate you so very much. Okay, I've got boundaries to set here. Thank you, Kim. As we know that I have boundaries. I tell y'all, we're not talking about politics, religion, and my age, since someone brought it up. These are things we don't talk about. All right, so let me get to our topic here. Here's what we talk about today. Most of us desire either a person to apologize or to forgive, right? We either want somebody to apologize to us or we want to forgive somebody. So what happens when they apologize and you still don't? Maybe they apologized. Maybe they didn't realize. I had to learn in my therapy when I lost my son and I tried to be shallow. I really did. I tried to be shallow. I tried to be a cougar and I tried to be shallow. And then I asked my therapist, I said, my coach therapist, I'm like, I think I'm shallow. Cause I was like dating men like 13 years younger than me and stuff. Yeah, 13 years. And I'm like, I think I might be shallow. And she said, Stacy, here's the thing is that everyone you love is going to hurt you, whether they mean to or not. So we're always looking for security and mistake that security means we're not ever going to be hurt. And the reality is that we're going to be hurt and we have to heal those hurts to get to where we want to be. And nobody else, even though you have somebody who loves you and wants you to heal, they may be encouraging you to heal. But if you're holding on to it, we have to ask ourselves why. So what is the payoff? Because somewhere there's a payoff. And oftentimes the payoff is in the proof because we're proving low self-worth. And it's not the person that you're pissed at, typically. It's the person before that and the person before that and the person before that. Because we're constantly gathering evidence, even though we think it's going to be different this time, right? So let me get back to my notes. Hello, Dead by Lunch. So when we have unhealed childhood wounds, even though someone has asked for forgiveness and even taken actions to show remorse, why are they still punished by us? Oh, yeah, on the Facebook. So why are they still punished by us? Why are we still punishing them? Because when you give somebody the business that you're passive aggressively punishing somebody. When I gave somebody the business, I was passive aggressively punishing somebody. It's a form of control because we think if we piss them off, if they see that we're pissed, they're going to quit acting a certain way. We're going to get into talking this evening about using your big girl or big boy words, whoever's here, because people don't just know. This is infantilization, and I'm sorry to tell y'all this. These are the cold, hard truths, and I'm sorry because I had to learn it too. And I can't. There's somewhere it's along the way where we wanted somebody to take care of us, and until we heal that someone that didn't take care of us or that we didn't feel taken care of by, or that fright. One person had someone cheat on them this week, and their other person is trying desperately to hold on to them. And so they're still giving them the business. It's like, are we working on it? Why do we think punishing them? We think, I need time. Well, how much time do we need? Really? And I'm not saying to not feel your feelings. Feel your feelings. Process your feelings. But don't keep having expectations that they can take the pain away, because they can't. They can try to help you, but they can't take your pain away. You have to process the pain. No one's going to just take our pain away. And so sometimes when you're working with a coach, you're going to have to dig, because I said there's an intellectual level. So the intellectual level, we say, I forgive. This is why unless someone's in a physically abusive relationship, do I not say, you just need to leave. Now, there is mental and emotional abuse and verbal abuse. There's all kinds of abuses, financial abuse. So I always, go digging myself before I suggest anything. So when people take the actions and are remorseful, why are we still punishing them, giving them the business? Are they still being punished for all the disappointments before, or is the wound still fresh? And though we say we want to work on it, are we doing the same thing unconsciously or consciously, even to punish them? Bringing stuff up from the past, if you can't forget the past, there's a problem. Because bringing stuff up from the past, and if you're bringing stuff up from the past with them when you go into the next relationship, that's right, you haven't resolved. Because when we go into the next relationship, we're still going to want them to fix us too. Come on, y'all. Y'all know I'm telling the truth. Because when you go in the next relationship, you're going to want them to fix you from this relationship, or at least that's what I used to do, because I used to hop, 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 hop. And it never got fixed until I fixed it. I had to fix it. I had to dig deep. I had to sit in there with the therapist, with, hey, Rodolfo, it's good to see you. I had to sit in there with the coach. And she had to ask me those questions that I hadn't thought about. Because if I could fix it myself, I would have fixed it before. If anyone else could have fixed it before, they probably would have. But it had to be a coach that I had to feel safe to feel vulnerable with. Because the reason we're giving people the business is typically because we don't feel safe to feel vulnerable with them. We have to heal that within ourselves. They're never going to be able to, but they are trying. They are trying. So why are we still giving them the business? If the shoe was on the other foot, because this is why I threw compassion in here. Maybe y'all didn't see that part, but I think I did in the earlier one. Compassion. Because when we quit micromanaging somebody else and what they're doing or not doing, and we start looking at what we have done, then we realize we are not totally perfect either. And we let people be humans rather than having expectations of them to heal our wounds. We have to heal our own wounds. Hopefully with a coach or something, because like I say, we can't come up with the thinking ourselves, or we would have, because it's in different levels and layers, and we bury it. And that's that shit that's buried on your soul. That's what happens. So, are they still being punished for all the disappointments before? Okay, I read that part. So this can be identified as giving people the business, right, Ken? Giving people the business. When we are consciously or unconsciously still even punishing them and not saying anything, not using our big girl words in a kind, gentle, compassionate way. We're coming at them sideways from our pain. Do we need to? Do we stop and breathe and ask ourselves, do I need to come at this person sideways from my pain? I know I used to do it. My central nervous system was amped up. And I used to expect people to, with my body language, to know how I was feeling. But see, I didn't have the words to say. So I had to learn to use my big girl words and change my body language because it was childish, because children go, right? And I did that too, because I had unhealed wounds. I didn't feel seen and I didn't feel heard. Sometimes, yes, I felt rejected too. Sometimes I felt neglected. So we have to heal those things. Hello, Mama. So giving people the business. I know Mama used to give people the business. So giving people the business was a learned behavior for me, wasn't it, Mom? So it's the body language of letting someone know that you're mad without talking about it and coming to resolve the difficulty. So when we don't talk about it, we're not coming to resolve the difficulty. And if we're coming out sideways, we're scaring people. So that's why I said compassion. So y'all listen up. Don't let me lose you yet, okay? The reality is this. It's most likely a learned behavior that maybe you received from a parent or that you have seen. So it's the desire to create safety gone awry, because you're trying to create safety because you're trying to keep from getting hurt when you're pushing somebody out, but it's defeating your purpose. So when this happens, one person may complain about losing affection and then also push the affection away, perceiving the other person as guilty while they may have actually done something wrong, or if they have not done anything, they may perceive them as guilty. So it's for the wrongs maybe before. And the reality is if they're not doing coaching, if somebody who has been unfaithful in a relationship and you stayed in the relationship with them, if they don't have a coach or they're not working with anybody, they're probably not working on it. So you get to decide, do I want to live in this relationship where I have to fear this, or am I going to get help for myself, and see where I want to grow from there. Yes, you have been known. It didn't really work, Mom. It didn't really work. It might have worked for a short amount of time. When we give people the business, sometimes it works for 2 weeks, 2 months, but then usually they go back to the same stuff, don't they? So when this When this happens, one person may complain about losing affection and then also push the affection away, perceiving another person as guilty. Okay, I already read that part. So I got to stay focused, Stacy. So I'm mindful of your time. Has it worked? I know it didn't work for me either. I mean, I could get pissed off and give people the business. Maybe 2 weeks they'd be nice, or 2 months, but then it was the same thing. So staying safe, what we're trying to do. Okay, so let me catch up with where I was. So I talked about if they have not done counseling, they're probably going to do the same thing in 2 weeks or 2 months, like I said, right? That's what happens. But I know that I work with people who both of their people are going to therapy, both of them are seeing a coach, and they're still, it takes time. It takes time. Hi, Edgar. So what we do is it comes down to you learning to navigate what you want instead of strategizing how to stay safe, because you're still focused on staying safe when you're giving people the business. So staying safe in all reality to protect yourself does not mean you're creating a case. Does not. What did I write here? Sometimes I can't read my own writing. Doesn't mean that, what you're doing is you're creating a case, a cycle, and a pattern by doing the same thing, expecting different results. And so this is what happens when we give people the business, is that they're good for maybe 2 weeks, 2 months, but we haven't stated our reasonable expectations or what our wants, needs, and desires. See, a lot of people have expectations, but they haven't said what those expectations are. Insanity, exactly, Kim. They haven't stated what those are. They just have expectations that they should know. No, they don't know. This is how we get unearned guilt. Is because when we think people should know, and somebody has thought we should know, and we didn't expect to get in trouble, and we got in trouble as children. And this is why people walk around sometimes in adulthood fearing that they're going to get in trouble as an adult, because they're still carrying unearned guilt. And no one knew about unearned guilt or transference of anger and these kind of things. But when a parent's had a bad day and they come home and they accuse you of doing something maybe you didn't do. I have worked with people who have been accused of doing things that they really didn't do, and then they got their butt busted or got scolded or got given the business, because a lot of times the parents give the children the business if you don't act a certain way. So a lot of people are trying to avoid getting the business, and those who were deeply wounded by getting the business are typically those who are giving people the business. For some, they're withholding attention, withholding affection, withholding. And I'm not saying sometimes that you don't need to take care of yourself, but I'm saying that if you're trying to get to have control by giving somebody the business, typically it's not going to work. Might work for 2 weeks, 2 months, but things will, if you don't have coaching or counseling or something, it's going to go back to the same old, because unspoken expectations aren't going to get you anywhere. So these patterns are not created in one fatal swoop, and most likely will not be broken in one instant of realization, as the pain is embedded in the nervous system. And that is why we express with body language. And body language alone will not get you the results. I had to learn to use my big girl words. I could not have expectations without stating what these expectations are. And if I don't state them, they're unrealistic. If I don't say what I want, so that's not realistic expectations. So forgiveness, when the perceived guilty one apologize, how does that go? Well, if they just blankly apologize and say they're sorry just to pacify you and keep the argument from escalating, then they may repeat the behavior again. This happens a lot. We talked about that the other night. That sometimes people just say, oh, you part ways a little while, then they come back saying, I miss you. Rodolfo. They come back and saying, I miss you. And if they don't say what it was that they did, or if they come back and just say, I'm sorry, that leaves you open for repeated behavior. So I'm getting to this part. So they repeat the behavior again. And I know for myself, when I did it or someone else, is often there's a short change in the other person's behavior, only to return back to the same behavior. I have seen these many times, especially in the 70s and 80s and 90s. But now We have so much information about human behavior here. And if you've not been in a 12, if you have been in a 12, if you have been in a 12-step program, we have to learn accountability and take responsibility for our actions. I can't say, it's not this tit for tat. You did this 5 days ago, 5 years ago, 5 months ago, and this is why I'm acting this way today. That won't serve us. That's not our mature self. That's not what our soul wants for us. So, in the 12-step program, like I said, we have to learn to take accountability. I have to talk to I had to talk to somebody every day and tell them what was going on in my head, because it wasn't a safe place sometimes, because I would be making up stories. We talked about that the other night, about how we make it make sense. And sometimes we will prove that we have a low self-worth. Most people never make it to the men's step. I know, because it's like step 9, right, Rodolfo? And a lot of times people come in and they look at the steps and they just want to hurry and get that pain over with, that instant gratification, that, that just blanket layer. They're like, oh, and I did too. I did too, but no, there's a process to this. And it's about learning what are our intentions and motivations. And when we're giving people the business, we have not thought about what my intention and motivation is. We just think I'm mad, and I'm letting them know I'm mad. So that's it. It's not fixing anything. So, yeah. And the thing is that it won't hurt. It will hurt us just as much as we're trying to hurt the other person. That's the thing. So if we have to learn to take accountability and responsibility. It's often a person who is trying to escape reality when we're just trying to do the blanket apology because of poor coping skills. Sometimes, when we are into the addiction process, simply not knowing how. That's all. Is we just don't know how. Sometimes we just don't know how to cope. Because when I said we're trying to make it make sense, and we don't know how to make it make sense, and we're trying to cope with these things, and have an addiction that's likely to have addiction through genetics or, social circumstances. It doesn't matter either one, because the end is always the same. So I'm not just talking about drug and alcohol, which are linked to the mind, to wanting to experience a deeper peace and spirituality, but there's also sex addiction, and a cheater may struggle with this. So if you're in a relationship with a cheater and they're not getting any help, then they may actually be struggling with sex addiction. And you can't do anything about it. Remember, we talked about the 3 C's, that you didn't cause it, you can't cure it, and you can't control it. So when people are stuck in these behaviors, these addictive behaviors, then, that's what happens. So the sex addiction is, linked sometimes to love, or a lot of the addictions have power, because the first step is admitting we're powerless, because we're usually trying to get some power when we can't cope over something. We can only control the ending. I like that 101 sonnet. Yep. So the cheater may struggle with this. There's shopping addiction, to try to feel good enough from the longing of possible lack and not being able to get what we wanted at one time, which can even go into hoarding and collecting oftentimes, with the intention to do something with it, but the inability and fear to let go. So there's so many that are linked to our mindsets. And if nothing changes, then guess what? Nothing changes. So if we keep giving people the business, then it's going to keep getting the same results. Insanity, like Kim said. So, yeah, let me find my step. So if someone tells you they're working on improving their behavior or what hurt you, unless they're actively doing something about it, seeing a therapist, a coach, 12-step program, with a sponsor, being accountable. Because when we got to tell on ourselves, then we tend to make the changes, because we get tired of having to tell on ourselves. And this is where the amends comes in. It's that after we make these mistakes, we might make the mistake once or twice. So I'll tell you how we do that. Yes, Grinchy. So clergy, you can work with a sponsor or clergy. Then, as bad as they may want the relationship or the stakes involved, if they're not doing any of that, then they're not working on it. If they're not talking to somebody else, letting them know what's going on in their mind. Because changing our behavior we have to change the same thinking that created the problem. That's the thing. Even if a person may rationalize that no one will find out. Two of the people I worked with this week had problems with forgiveness and giving people the business. One person I worked with this week had a problem with, thinking that they could, just smoke weed, because we will seek relief when we have poor coping mechanisms. And I don't mean poor in a bad way. I mean it that we just didn't know any different. So we will seek relief from pain or from confusion or from, the proven to ourselves our low self-worth once again, but we're only claiming the self-worth for ourselves. It doesn't mean that you are less worthy than anybody else, because chances are you have gone above and beyond to prove that you're worthy. But until you feel that and heal that within yourself, you won't accept it from people outside of yourself, and you will look for evidence that you're not until you start looking for evidence that you are. And it's not by what you do, it's by acknowledging you. So we're also taught in recovery that we need to do behavior. We're also taught in recovery that what we need to do with the behaviors that hurt someone else, that we need to make amends and not just say, I'm sorry. I can't just tell people I'm sorry. I tell people I apologize because I'm a human being. I'm fallible. So I tell people I apologize for my behavior. I apologize for forgetting to do this. I apologize that I didn't get back to you. I apologize for this. I'm not going to tell people and re-triggers. Sometimes I'm sorry in itself is a trigger, because how many times, especially if you're dealing with an addictive personality, how many times have they said they're sorry and did the same thing? Because unless they were working with somebody, they're going to keep doing the same thing. Keep doing the same thing. So I'll catch my breath and find my spot again. When we make amends, we acknowledge what we have done so we can correct our behavior. You see, we don't just say, I'm sorry. We acknowledge what it was that I did so I can correct my behavior, because I'm not going to want to keep having to tell somebody that it's easy to tell people I'm sorry over and over again. It's not easy to tell somebody, you know what? I am sorry. I misunderstood what you were saying. I apologize, or I regret my behavior for giving you the business. I really needed to process my feelings instead of just shunning you and giving you the business. That's not very nice, because if we think about it, we wouldn't like it if somebody treated us that way. And then maybe they have before. And so that's like what we talk about, taking the inventory, being like, where did this pain come from? Because you learned how to give somebody the business from somewhere. So where does that come from? Because anyway. So we can correct our behavior. That's what an amends is correcting the behavior, is apologizing that, I apologize that I had this behavior. I apologize that I, snapped at you. I apologize that I came out sideways at you. I'm working on it. I regret that I was jealous, and I'm working on it. I regret that I did this, and I'm working on it. And when we say, and I'm working on it, that means we're really working on it. We're not just, but we have to remember the reason that we don't believe people and that we're already getting ready for disappointment is because we've been disappointed. And so there's an expectation of the negative. But until we heal those expectations, because that's one thing I had to work on in codependency, is healing those expectations. So this calls for us to engage our mind and put words together that explain how we regret our behavior and that we're working on it, whatever it is. It is easy to go back to the imprinted learned behaviors. That is why we have a sponsor or a coach or somebody, and have to get honest about our actions, so we'll quit acting on the compulsion that caused the pain. Because it's a compulsive behavior to give people the business. We just automatically do it all of a sudden because something triggers us to where we're not feeling seen or heard or whatever it is. I don't know. I'm speaking to a lot of people, but that's a common thing. So my sponsor told me about thoughts, feelings, and regrets, to name it, claim it, bless it, and let it go. Because I had to learn about my disappointments. My expectations were appointments with disappointment. That's what it was. I did have to learn to use my big girl words and say my feelings were hurt when, instead of you did this and you did that, and and quit bringing up the past. You need to heal the past. If they're not doing it today, it's about important. That's why we do the breathing, is to stay in the day. So my sponsor told me to name it, claim it, bless it, and let it go, what the pain is. And sometimes we may have to keep naming it, blessing it, and claiming it, and letting it go. But let's make progress rather than perfection. That's where we're at. Progress over perfection. How about forgiving ourselves? We're getting there. That's the thing, is like I said last week, the first person we need to set boundaries with is ourselves. And the first person that we need to forgive is ourselves too. You are absolutely right, Rodolfo. You know what you're talking about. Yes, because it is important to forgive ourselves. It's important to forgive ourselves for thinking that we were less than worthy. That's what we do in tapping a lot of times, is forgiving ourselves for thinking that we were less than worthy when we do the emotional freedom technique. Forgiving ourselves for trying to prove that low self-worth. Forgiving ourselves for thinking we're less than anybody else. Forgiving ourselves for taking on another person's pain and claiming it as our own. Forgiving ourselves for you name it. So that is, name it, claim it, bless it and let it go. That's why in our work, right, Rodolfo, in our work, we get to the fourth step, the things that people did to hurt us, the fear that we have. And we name the people that hurt us, the fear, and then we name what it was that they did that caused us to have the fear. And then usually our shortcoming is the way that we behave as a result of that, is it's just a shortcoming. People want to blame people sometimes, and you can't blame people and empower yourself. A fault, be like, oh, it's your fault, and stuff like that. That's not empowering. So it's, naming what was the fear, what happened, who was the person that hurt me, what was the fear behind it, because there's usually a fear behind it. And then what did it cause me to act like? Where did I get this to where I have a controlling behavior? Naming it. If I have controlling behavior, I need to name it. I regret that I had controlling behavior. Somebody I talked to earlier today, it's like, oh, they didn't have the controlling behavior, but they were telling me about someone else. And I'm like, well, this is controlling behavior. And they need to figure out why they got the controlling behavior. Typically, controlling behavior is you're trying to protect yourself when you get triggered with a fear. I hope that that's helpful. So when someone apologizes and takes action and we continue to push them away, we need to acknowledge our pain and decide, am I willing to work on this? Is this passive-aggressive behavior creating the outcome that I want, or am I trying to punish another adult and make them suffer? And if so, what is the rule? And am I telling them what the rule is? Thank you, Rodolfo. I appreciate that. Because a lot of times people make up rules, but are they telling people what the rules are? And then they're getting mad at people for not following the rules, and they don't even know. What is it that's bothering you about me? And maybe it's something small. So if it's something small and we're afraid to tell somebody that, then we need to process that in ourselves. That's how we know what to process, rather than punishing another adult because they're getting on our nerves. And the nerve may be a trigger. And the trigger may be like, and it's having to learn to use more words, because learning to use more words gives us more experiences. So, is this passive aggressive behavior creating an outcome that I want, or am I trying to punish another adult and make them suffer? And if so, what is the rule? And am I telling them, or am I silent suffering? A lot of people, not a lot, but a couple of the people that I work with, they want to be held. They want intimacy. They want love. But when somebody tries to do that, it's like, nope. Nope. And so it's these kind of things, or they're not letting them hold them. They really want to be held. Their inner child really wants to be held, but they're pushing somebody away because their ego is saying, I know, right? So their ego is saying, no, I don't want to let them in because they hurt me. And we keep carrying that hurt. And see, that's the thing, is that just because if that person goes away, it doesn't mean your hurt's going to go away. Because for you to conceive or perceive that they thought lesser of you and that you took this on, that they cheated because you didn't do something right, or that they did this because you didn't do something right. For you to even think that is you thinking lesser than yourself. This is why we have to, right? Pay attention to me, please don't look at me. Right, Rodolfo? So we really want to be held when we're hurt, but if we're pushing somebody away, then they're trying to hold us. So we're sending mixed messages. And we're creating unrealistic expectations because somebody's trying to give us what we want and we're telling them no. Because and the thing is when we think rationally, that's an irrational thing. Because when we think rationally, well, if they don't try to show me love, then I'm still going to be creating this case that they don't care about me. Make it make sense, right? But I'm not trying to slight anybody because I get it, because that's what we do. We can complicate. That's complicated, right? And I know I used to be able to complicate some stuff, and sometimes I still can complicate some stuff. So these questions are something we need to ask ourselves. And I know we weren't taught in most cases. We were taught what? We were taught to punish and make them pay. Revenge, right? It is like punishing kids because at the same time, it's like when we ground a kid, y'all know, when we ground a kid and then they're bored and we have to deal with it, it's like we grounded ourselves. And that's what we do. And my mom used to say, don't cut off your nose to spite your face. But this is kind of like what that is, right? And by the way, that came from the French War. And that's what they were saying back then, because y'all know when we've heard these old things, I want to know, where did it come from? So we give them the business and keep that going. And after a while, they may get tired of it and go on about theirs. And then we will either prove in our mind that they didn't care, just as we were proven, or chase them, or we might chase them. And both are unhealthy. That's unhealthy behavior. So if we didn't see it, the thing is about not being arrogant, because if we didn't see a healthy relationship modeled for us, I will, Mom. Are you going to bed? If we didn't see a healthy relationship modeled for us, there's no way we're going to know what a healthy relationship looks like. Grinch Mama said hi. You going to bed, Mom? Are you signing off? Sounds like you're signing off. Or we chase them when they quit. This creates that dynamic in the relationship where you got the chaser, is that there's always somebody chasing. And, I talked about the twin flame the other night. I got to drink water. I talked about the twin flame the other night. And that's what happens is there's a chaser and a runner, and they take turns going back and forth, and that's unhealthy. All right. So, and both are unhealthy and may have just been a learned or not thought about behavior, as we can become so hyper focused on them, and they get all our power, and they get our pain too. So in forgiveness, speaking of power, there are a lot of instances when people have been victims and their central nervous system is still dysregulated. And just like I talked about boundaries last week, being with ourselves first, like Rodolfo had mentioned, the forgiveness comes with ourselves first, and so do the boundaries, so that we feel comfortable with it. So when the central nervous system is dysregulated, being with ourselves first with forgiveness comes with yourself also. Hear me out. This is not re-victimizing. It's letting go of the power that the perpetrator, whoever the perpetrator is, the guilty person, put on you on your life decisions where you may have accepted intolerable behavior because of the instance you may have subconsciously thought that you deserved that behavior, subconsciously. Or you didn't live at full capacity because you didn't get the opportunity to process and grieve the violation, because some people really have been violated. Some people really have been treated horribly. So it's not to let that to keep running our lives. See, that's where the healing comes in, because we tend to find that it shows up in a different form somewhere else in our life if we don't do the healing process, because it's meant to heal. Whatever faith you believe in, they talk about healing of some sort. There's always healing, and there wouldn't even be the word for healing. I think I'm getting to that in a minute because I wrote this. So, forgiveness of self isn't saying something was your fault. It's processing that it wasn't and giving your inner or adult child the gift of forgiveness, not somebody else. This is why I say it starts with you. Some of us feel stupid for doing the same thing and expecting different results, or allowing ourselves to do it again. I've done it again too. I have. I'm a human being, and I regret when this happens. But having to say that I regret this helps me to be able to move forward, as long as it's safe. Because some people, you are not safe with saying that, but at least saying it to yourself, taking accountability to yourself. I regret and I forgive myself for exposing myself to this behavior, subjecting myself to this behavior, or whatever it is. So this gives you freedom to let go of the shame, unearned and earned guilt, and etc. We wouldn't need a forgiveness if there wasn't a perception of wrong. The reality is, aside from criminal behavior, words like judgment, guilty, wouldn't even be here without forgiveness, right? That's why I talked about judgment and discernment, because judgment says that, oh, this is a bad person and da 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 da. When we realize and heal ourselves, we understand that the other person was wounded too. Because here's the thing: is that we chose that person. I chose my ex-husband, and while we are not compatible. We have different thoughts. We have different feelings about things. We had different feelings about how we raised our kids. We had different feelings about other things, but we also had a lot of great times together, you know. And I can't live with him. I can't tolerate him because he'll get my business. He'll tell me what to do and all of this. So I'm no contact with him, but I do love him. Not in the part where I'm like, it's not a sexual thing. I don't, but it's like, I do love him. He was a great experience in my life. He's the father of my kids. He's not a bad person. He has wounds too. And his wounds and my wounds just collide, you know. But I chose him at one time. I chose him. That's accountability and responsibility. I wasn't tricked. I'm not a victim, but I did have to heal from some of the wounds in that relationship, you know. And yeah, but it doesn't make him a bad person because I chose. And I'm not, some people don't choose their victimization, especially children. So children, like I said before, you have to adapt. And sometimes we give that the power to give people the business and to act out as children. But when we start growing and healing ourselves, and, those tears water our soul, instead of lashing out and being mean to somebody else, giving them the business, being mean to somebody else for our pain. Then we can see. It will be into me see when we are allowed to let ourselves be vulnerable, but we have to be vulnerable with ourselves first. Self-esteem, self-worth, all of this starts with ourself, and forgiveness and boundaries do too. Not to subject ourselves to things that hurt us. So, where am I? So some of us didn't even learn how to forgive. We didn't learn how to grieve. Sometimes we have to grieve the way that we thought things were. Somebody asked me the other day, when I look back 10 years, I was married to my ex-husband for the second time 10 years ago. And did I know now that I would be divorced from him? That wasn't the plan. I didn't know now that I would be. But I had to grieve that, and I had to process that pain, and I worked on that pain that I developed through that. And that pain helped me to heal to where I don't have to be angry. I'm not angry at him because I don't talk to him. It's not that I'm angry at him. I don't want to be angry at him. I have a boundary with myself because I know that, thank you, Shallow, because I know that he's a good person, but we just don't, I won't allow him to tell me what to do. I just won't. So, yeah. We need to learn how to forgive, and it's often through words. Words. We want somebody to say the right words for us to forgive them, but what if they don't know them? Just like our exes, just like our parents, just like, what if they don't know? Sometimes we have to, I didn't like it. One time this man agreed, he apologized to me sideways. This man hurt my feelings. What he said hurt my feelings, and I cried. I didn't like his tone, and I cried. And then the next day he comes back and he's like, I'm sorry that you got upset over what I said. Now, to me, I'm thinking this is a sideways apology. I'm sorry you got upset at what I said. He wasn't apologizing for what he said. See, that's what pissed me off. And then I go to one of these sponsors and I tell her, yeah, he apologized, but he came out sideways. And she's like, honey, you don't get to decide the way that people apologize. I don't get to decide the way that people apologize. I do get to decide, how I'm going to carry myself. In the future, I made sure, of course, that, I didn't carry the grudge with him, but I also didn't expose whatever. I can't even remember what it was. See, this is the thing, is that a lot of times we don't remember those pains. I'm sorry you're so sensitive. Yes, exactly, Rodolfo. I'm sorry you're so sensitive. So, yeah. We need to learn how to forgive, and it's often through our words that the whole act of forgiveness is necessary. When we are wronged, our words and therefore our growth are stunted, and it may feel personal, and it is up to you. And it is to you. So it may feel personal. When we feel wronged, it feels personal. And it may be to you, but it's not the other person, because guess what, Rodolfo and everyone else? So when they apologize sideways and when they do what they're doing, it's because that's what they want to do. When we second guess ourselves, and this is where we need to forgive ourselves, is for when we second guess ourselves and think that they behaved a certain way because of me. They behaved a certain way because of them and their wounded child. See, we're not the only ones wounded. And when we can be more humane about people when we understand a lot of people are walking around with wounds. The people we choose in our lives may have wounds. And so are they willing to work on it? Because if you can find a person who's not been wounded in this life, let me know. Let me know. Anybody in the comments want to tell me you found a person that's not been wounded in this life? It's not personal. We all get wounded. And everything can be a catalyst for our growth instead of victim and a villain situation, although that might have been a learned behavior. We can unlearn that. Because I know for me, my source doesn't want me to walk around thinking that people want to be mean to me, or that my source even wants to be mean to me. Sometimes I hurt my own feelings with my thoughts, and that's where I have to forgive myself and set boundaries with myself, because I hurt my feelings sometimes. You may hurt your feelings sometimes. See, I have to own it when I hurt my feelings. It's not what somebody else did. It's the way I perceive it. Now, sometimes what somebody does hurt my feelings. And they might have been intentional. So we're going to have feelings. So I'm not trying to mix that up too bad to where you don't think we don't have pain, because we do have pain. We're not supposed to just be numbed out people. So some people will hurt your feelings. The compassionate part is knowing that hurt people hurt people. So that's what I'm saying. They will hurt your feelings, some people. Because hurt people, but are we going to take it on? And we may take it on for a minute. It may touch a point in us where we question and second guess ourselves, but cry, do what you need to do. But don't think that that's a part of your identity, because you get to identify yourself. I do not like my ex-husband. Another reason he because he used to like to tell me how I felt and what I thought. And it's like, oh, no, no, you don't get to tell me how I feel and what I think. That's a definite boundary with me. At one time, I did let people tell me what I thought and how I felt, and I fought hard not to have people tell me what I thought and how I felt for myself. I had to do all the boundaries with myself and forgive myself not to take that stuff on. So don't, I did it too. I did it too. So I'm not trying to shame anybody. I sometimes cry still. I still have pain. We're human beings. We're going to cry. We're going to have pain. But hopefully we can remember our strength too. Nobody's perfect here. So process and self-reflection will give us the words to forgive ourselves when we process it and have some self-reflection. I've got that feeling wheel. Some of y'all have got that feeling wheel. And what our other feelings, the feelings we didn't learn, are on the other side of the feelings that we did learn that have caused us pain. So identifying, naming it, identifying what is this pain? Where did this pain come from? And then own it. This is my pain. This is my pain of not feeling good enough. Then we can claim our self-worth, when we can quit hiding the fact and trying to overwork and overindulge and trying to overdo everything to hide that pain. Once we can realize that pain within ourselves, we can quit going over that way and live more openly and freely to who you are. That's the freedom, the freedom. So process and self-reflection give us the words to forgive ourselves, but also to negotiate. Because there's going to be people you got to negotiate with, because we don't want to be in one-sided relationships. We negotiate if the relationship is, fixable. So the reality is that we'll all make mistakes, and most of us, I believe, don't set out to hurt someone purposely. And maybe even those that hurt us didn't either. So this brings us to the compassion part and learning the art of forgiveness. Compassion for ourselves. Hey, Angela, it's good to see you. I came on here a little earlier, tonight. So yeah, I won't be as late tonight. So compassion for ourselves. We're talking about forgiveness, communication, and compassion, because a lot of times when we are unable to forgive, it's because we are unable to find our words and compassion, communication and compassion, because we want something to be communicated to us in a certain way. And if it's not, we may give people the business, but we have to realize in our humanization that maybe we don't know how to communicate our words either. So we learn to negotiate what our wants, needs, and desires are, because we may have expectations that are unspoken, and those would be unrealistic expectations, just to kind of summarize where we're at. So compassion for ourselves, because sometimes our own pain perceptions lie to us. We may be overperforming, trying to prove that we're worthy, but our perception will still keep telling us that we're not, because somebody else may not have the words, or even if they do have the words to tell us we're worthy, we will blow them off until we believe it for ourselves. So what are we trying to prove? So it's being aware, naming it, that, oh, my inner dialogue is trying to prove that I'm not worthy. Yes, girl, exactly. Forgiveness is accepting the apology you're never going to receive, because a lot of people don't even know what they did. That's why I was talking about an amends earlier, because when I make an amends, or when we make an amends, we have to apologize for what we did, knowing what did I do. And when somebody tells me this hurt my feelings when this, it's not to do this tit for tat thing and come back and say, well, it hurt my feelings when you did this. It's to acknowledge the pain. And this is oftentimes why we get stuck in this, is because you may say, okay, first off, I had to learn to say it hurt my feelings when this happened. And to acknowledge it, it may not have been what you intended, right? So owning that it hurt my feelings, Rodolfo. Oh, yeah. So being able to do that, is acknowledging it within ourselves, instead of keep trying to make somebody else up to a bar that we don't know how to communicate ourselves. So There you have it. The compassion, because sometimes our own pained perceptions lie to us, telling us the same old story without asking if it is indeed, the same story. So, isn't it interesting that communication and compassion both have the same root prefix, come, you know, and that root is the Latin prefix meaning with or together, because it's going to take two people. You can't just sit here and punish another adult. It takes two people to work on something. So would there be a need for forgiveness if not for the other person? Because that's mostly why we need forgiveness, is there if there wasn't another person. So at one time there was together. So when I was mad at my ex, my sponsor told me to go pray for compassion. This was another ex, lover. So she told me to go pray for compassion and empathy. Because we can get twisted about some little stuff, and I was twisted about something small, and I was twisted because I didn't feel seen or heard. I was twisted because I didn't feel like he cared. And you know what triggered it? Because that was my catalyst. He was my catalyst for my daddy issues. The poor man got a haircut, the same man who couldn't hear me. He got this haircut, this buzz haircut, and he'd gotten it a couple of times. And we went to eat, and the waitress said, "Oh, you got a haircut." And he's like, "Yep." And she asked me, "Do you like it?" And I'm like, "Nope." And then and I was sick too. So when I'm sick, I'm not very nice, just like a lot of people. And so then she's like, "Oh." And so then I was so mad at him, and I talked to my sponsor, and I told her about the whole thing, that I was upset because he got his hair cut. This is control, y'all. And so I was sick. I was sick, and I was mad that he got his hair cut in this way again after I didn't like it the first time. And my sponsor told me, "Well, you love him. You don't just love him for his hair." And I'm like, "I don't love him right now." And she's like, "Stacy, you go wash your face and dry your face, and you pray for compassion and empathy." So I had to go wash my face and dry my face and pray for compassion and empathy. And it works, y'all. It works. It helped. We still broke up, and it wasn't about his hair. It was about, I finally realized, oh, he's mentally and emotionally kind of like not what I want. He's emotionally unavailable. He can only go so far in a relationship because of his own pain. You see, he just didn't have the capacity. So every time he broke up with me, I worked on myself, and I finally realized it wasn't me. It was, he just didn't have the capacity to go any further. So this is where we begin to be able to humanize ourselves and others. When we're hyper-focused from past pains, obsessing on another person's behavior, we may become self-righteous and make stories up in negative self-dialogue, deciding that another person's behavior is linked to our worth. We're not even able to see that we have made mistakes too, and that the same behavior that we received did not make us a better person or work. So when someone's been passive aggressive or given me the business or, withheld love from me, at one time I did chase it, and I don't do that anymore because I know that's unhealthy. So if we want something different, we have to do something different. So quit making it about they. That is definitely a sign of codependence, giving them the power, or they the power over your mood. Actions and behaviors. This is our wounded self that still has not been acknowledged. No person outside of ourselves is going to fix us or them. A lot of times people try to talk, did I marry a narcissist as a result of having an angry father? Oh, the narcissist was so loving in the beginning. And he even carried it out. I don't think that I think that behavior comes and goes with him. I don't know. It's his fears, because for the first 2 years I was with him, they used to call us Ward and June, like Leave It to Beaver, because we never fought the first 2 years. And he gave me everything that I wanted. But guess what? I was also smoking weed and drinking too. So maybe I didn't know. I shared the other day that I was happy with him for the first 5-7 years that I was with him. And in the last 5, I was not happy. And here's the thing is that I was sober the last 5, and I was drinking and smoking weed the first 5 to 7 years, except when I was pregnant. So it was often my coping that when he did something, he might have been doing the same thing when I was drinking and smoking weed, but I just blew it off because I didn't care because I'd be drinking and smoking weed. I was a little more uptight when I quit smoking and drink when I quit smoking weed and drinking, I was more uptight, you know. So I was not the cool parent with the kids. I was the parent that was strict. So this is the thing is, I could blame him for a lot of the problems that we've had, but I can't because he was not the strict parent. He was the cool parent, but he was also the abusive parent. And I was the strict parent, but I was also the weak parent, if this makes sense. This is what I mean about owning our own stuff, you know, is that that's what it is. It doesn't make me any better or him any worse or him any better or me any worse because we both had our faults, our fallibilities. It wasn't one of our faults. It was that we we're both human beings and we both tried to do the best that we could based on our own pains, you know? So the need to process, so I don't know if that answered your question, Angela. He later became that way because I think that when we had kids, that triggered a lot of our pains. And it's not our kids' fault. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that trying to protect those kids were that the kids were an outward sign of our inner child. Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. My coping mechanisms didn't. Yeah, because we were both drinking and smoking and all of this back before we had kids. So, yeah. So the need to process is to be able to recognize triggered pain. When I was smoking weed and drinking, I was not able to recognize triggered pain. So this calls for us to slow down and not get exercise jump into conclusions. And that and being suspicious all the time are signs your central nervous system is in overdrive. Hey, Robbie, you are later. It's okay if you just woke. That's fine. We're almost done. And some of it's been kind of, repetitive, I think, but hopefully it's been helpful. Hopefully it's been helpful. So the central nervous system in overdrive, you're looking for something and determined to find it. That's like when we're obsessing, I had one client this week, I gave her the assignment, I told her, I said, don't look in your partners because he was unfaithful once. And I'm like, don't look, just set a goal with yourself and set times where you can look at his business. Now, most people would tell them, don't look at it. But here's the thing, I know she's going to look at it. And so rather than shaming her, is that she gets to feel accomplished if she looks at it less. You definitely need repetition. I do too. I do too. Thank you, Rodolfo. So the real deal is that she's looking at it less, and so when she can set that goal, she can feel accomplished and start learning to trust herself and him. Oh, it's all right, Robbie. I hope you got some good rest. And if you're sleepy, I totally understand if you want to go back to sleep. I'm glad that you jumped in and said hello. So, I gave her the assignment. Just look at it, set a time, how many times you're going to look at it, and then I'll meet with her in a few weeks and we'll see how it went. But the point was that I didn't want her shaming herself because she has obsessed over this and she is trying to protect herself. So she's going to look at it because she's a human. So if she can look at it less, So you're looking for something and determined to find it when your central nervous system. And I sometimes do it with the chaos and things that's going on in America. I have my own thoughts about things. And so sometimes I was looking at that. And then I had to say, Stacy, what are you looking for? And was it evidence to prove that it was as messed up as I thought it was? And do I have any power over that? So regardless of how long you have to dig, and honestly, it takes the joy you could be living in this moment. And that's what I expressed to her is you're missing the joy when you're obsessing over going into that business, that stuff, because it's not her business, to get in his stuff like that. But he is working on it and she's working on it too. I don't smoke. Mm-mm. I ain't looking for a man on here either. Thank you, Kim. So here's the thing, when we have this, when our central nervous system, I told you the two signs is when we're looking for something and we're starting to feel anxious when we're looking for something. That's one thing. But when we have a knee-jerk reaction from a trigger, when we have a knee-jerk reaction from a trigger, then that's a part of our central nervous system too, because that's a reaction when our central nervous system is in overdrive. I know, right, Rodolfo? Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm not. I am not. So, when we're obsessing and looking for these things, we're taking away the breath and the joy that we have right here today. So that's why the breath is so important for regulation, because you're going to find that when you're obsessing and looking for something, when you check yourself, you're not even breathing hardly. So your brain's not getting very much oxygen. And so you're starting to get anxious because your respiratory system isn't getting much oxygen. And your digestive system is doing its thing too. You're getting sick at your stomach by what you're trying to find because you're trying to prove something to yourself. So, when the central nervous system is in overdrive, we may not be in our right mind. We may make knee-jerk decisions and may later regret it and feel the need to grovel in shame. This is why people second-guess themselves, is sometimes that's what's happening. And they don't know this is happening within their body, as well as why they do what they do. Because sometimes people are like, I don't know, why did I do this? And it's because it's a knee-jerk reaction. It's a trigger. And I didn't acknowledge the trigger. What am I insecure about? What's going on here? So the only way to avoid that is by getting honest and processing the pain so we don't react and live on and repeat behavior again and again. So learning to communicate is freedom. How many of us don't feel like we have the words? A lot of times we wish I wish I would have said this. I wish I would have said that. I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done that. And that's because you're not getting oxygen to your mind to be in your divine mind, to have your intuition, because we're already forming an expectation from the lack of breath and living on old tapes. So, if we're not allowed to be seen and heard for some reason, this is why we have an immature, childish reaction rather than a curious, childlike response. That's all. And we can learn to do that through our breath, through taking the breath and pausing and saying, what is really going on with me right now? Not they're a dumbass, not they're this, not they're that. Is what's going on with me right now. Thanks. I don't know if Mom's still on here. Is she still on here, Robbie? Did I miss her comment? Did she say hello? And did I miss it? I thought she was going to bed earlier, so I'm not sure. The childish part is only the wounded inner child that didn't feel safe or learn how to communicate their wants, needs, and desires, and may have expectations that the right and perfect person will know. And we even try to be that right and perfect person for someone else sometimes. In both cases, still is the fear of abandonment. That the other person and us, when we're trying to be the right and perfect person, we have a fear of abandonment. When we're looking for that right and perfect person, we have a fear of abandonment too. Ah, okay. Yeah, I think she skedaddled on us. I think she went to bed or somewhere. So low self-worth and inadequacy through insecurity, and there's nothing wrong with you. That processing won't heal you. So, I used to think that I was stupid, but just because I didn't know. And I learned that I could learn. I could unlearn learned behaviors, and that's what I had to do. I'm still doing. I'm on a journey. I'm on this adventure called life. And as long as I have a breath in me, I'm going to get to keep learning stuff. This morning, I caught myself automatically because I thought, oh, I was doing my prayer. And I thought, oh, we are reactive as a result of abuse and lack of emotional intelligence. Right? But they didn't know, Angela. Most of them didn't know. So they just, So this morning, when I was looking, I was thinking, oh, it's the 22nd. And then I automatically started to reach for my phone to verify that it's the 22nd. This is a programmed behavior, just like that autonomic response that I talk about and our triggers and things like this. When that one's a simple one. The reason you know 7 plus 5 is 12. I heard something the other day about that. The reason we know 7 plus 5 was 12 is because that's a learned behavior. We don't even have to think about that, you know. And just like I was reaching for my phone, and I'm like, oh my gosh, why am I reaching for my phone to verify the date that it is? There was a time I didn't have a phone to verify the date like that. And so I'm not using my brain. So it's about our communication is putting our words together and using our brain. And the phone is good too. But, you know, we need to also be trusting ourselves that we know what day it is. So then I had to go in my phone and see, when did the calendar start? So then I started thinking, when did when did the calendar start? Who created the calendar? It's got a long history, y'all. If you go to my Facebook page, I posted it. The things that I get up in the morning and think about. So learning, and when we're aware of our thoughts and not just reacting on them. See, that's the thing, is learning to become aware of our thoughts, and then we can learn to express our words more, because learning gets to be fun when we're not afraid of being stupid. Isn't that crazy? So learning to communicate in itself is an adventure, as our words are expressions of our thoughts and our feelings are expressed in our actions or inactions through body language. Learning to communicate words that can express our feelings can actually increase our energy, as I learned teaching martial arts. The same dialogue creates the same results as I'm sorry as an amends, you know, and an amends. We can either say I'm sorry and it just be a blanket statement to where we're not acknowledging what we've done or where this pain's coming from. Because it hurt people, right? So if I'm trying to make an amends and somebody's trying to make an amends, we have to acknowledge where the pain came from or what we did, you know. So, Robbie, I've also wondered about those things too. I know, right? I love mystical stuff, learning, you know, how did this happen? Why do we do this? Because we just take things for granted on a daily basis and don't realize how things were created, and that we are creators. We just sometimes live in everybody else's reality, but we can create our own. And that's why I'm here. That's what I set my intention, is to help people think about thoughts they never thought about, you know, or that they hadn't thought about. Angela, did I have an internal dialogue when I was codependent? And were you aware of how you used to talk to yourself? Oh, yes. Oh, yes, Angela. In fact, I had to, when I was in coaching, you know, my coach used to tell me, and I told one of the people that I work with, I don't know if she's still on here, but my internal dialogue was that I wasn't worthy. And I didn't know how to say it, you know, but I would act on it. So it's that little child, our inner child, acting out that emotional immaturity that I had. So you may have heard this story before, but I had a date, same guy, my daddy catalyst, same guy. We had a date. He told me on a Wednesday night we're going to go out Friday. Friday got to be there. It got to be 5, 5:30, 6, and he hadn't called or anything. And so my sponsor, and I talked to my sponsor, and I'm like, yeah, he told me we were going to dinner tonight, but he hadn't called or nothing. She's like, well, are you hungry? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, well, then eat something. That's codependent, when you're waiting on somebody and you're hungry and you haven't eaten something. So it took me a while, because I went to the codependent program for a couple of years steadily, you know, faithfully, one night a week. And so I read all the stuff on codependency. I wrote all the stuff down for my 12 steps in codependency, but then I had to practice and develop and learn what it was that I did that was codependent. So you're exactly right. And so my negative dialogue, even though I might not have had the ability to speak it, I was proving it. So then I ate something, but I didn't talk to him. I gave him the business, you know, because I was pissed because he forgot about me. Because that was one of my biggest fears, being abandoned, being forgot about. So I was proving it to myself that he abandoned me and forgot about me. Then I go to my coach, and I tell my coach, I said, yeah, we were supposed to go to dinner Friday night, but he didn't call. He didn't do anything. She said, well, did you call him and ask him if everything was all right, or if y'all were still going to dinner? And I'm like, no. because I didn't know how to communicate that. It never occurred to me to be an adult and to call and say, hey, I'm getting hungry. Is everything okay? No, I was proving it to myself, my low self-worth, that he would forget about me. That's what I was proving. I was not being an adult and saying, you know, that, hey, did you forget we were going to dinner tonight? There's a part of me that feared rejection, probably. In fact, I'm sure that it was, and I still got rejection. Thanks, Robbie. I bet he is sorry now. He was the one kept leaving me and then coming back and leaving me and coming back. And, we're friends on Facebook. We don't talk to each other, but we're friends on Facebook. He might tell me happy birthday once a year or whatever, but I see him, and he posts some stuff, there's no hard feelings with him. He did the best he could. I feel like he really did. But the thing is that, when I see him put his relationship status, because he's, of course he's in another relationship. That was like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, somewhere in there. And so when I see him put it's complicated in his relationship status, I'm like, I bet it is. I know it's complicated. No, he did the best he could, and his child was wounded too. You criticize yourself and you didn't feel important. Exactly. Exactly. I did not feel important. When I did my child, sometimes when I'm working with people, we do a why exercise. And that same boyfriend once went to a camp and he didn't invite me to go and everything, and I was mad at him for not inviting me to go, and I felt abandoned because this was the underlying fear, was that abandonment. So I felt abandoned, and he goes to the camp, and then he calls me from the camp, and he's having fun. And I was so pissed off because he was having fun without me at that camp, and I didn't get to go. So I had to ask myself why. And I can't remember the whole process because, like I said, this has been 15, 20 years ago. And I'm like, why? Why? And when I got down to the bottom of it, Angela, it was because I didn't feel important enough. Exactly. And so I know when I get triggered now, even because this stuff, we don't just get over it. We can't just forgive and get over it. I do forgive the person, but maybe I still am triggered by the act. I'm not triggered by those acts anymore because those acts were the catalyst for my emotional maturity because I got to process it. If I would never have processed it with my coach and, and learned these things, then I would still be thinking the same way. Yes, yes. I keep asking myself why. And that's what I realized is that my inner child, when I don't feel important enough, is when if I do want to react, and when I have to stop myself from reacting, when I have to process, because I stop myself and I process things. And I realize that things aren't the way that I'm thinking that it is sometimes. Sometimes it is, but I have to stop and process it. And then find my words to say it hurt my feelings when this happened. I know that you might not have intended to hurt my feelings, but it hurt my feelings. And if they dismiss my feelings, I know, oh, because sometimes they'll be like, oh, most of the time they're like, oh, I didn't realize that hurt your feelings. Okay. So, but it was about being able to say that. Because otherwise I would be passive aggressive because I just didn't know how to say that because I was afraid of telling somebody that I was hurt because I was afraid of looking weak. I told you I used to be weak in the relationship. So, learning to communicate in itself is an adventure with our words as expressions of our thoughts and our feelings expressed in our actions or inactions through body language. Learning to communicate words that can express our feelings can actually increase our energy, as I learned teaching martial arts. The same dialogue creates the same results as I'm sorry and amends, the differences between those. So I'm sorry is rooted in reaction, and passive aggressive is rooted in reaction. Amends is in response and communicated clearly. Regulation can keep us from having to make amends as are expressing our words and our expectations calmly and not from pain with others. If I go from my pain point, I might have to make an amends because I might, accuse somebody of something if I'm at a pain point. And that's what a lot of times people do is if we're coming from a pain point, we may be accusing somebody of doing something and they may not have. So we need to communicate. I'm sorry, did I misunderstand this? Because sometimes we do. They wouldn't even have a word misunderstanding if there weren't misunderstandings. That one was mineral water. This one is water. I've been talking a lot today. So regulation. Okay, I already said that part. So breathe, darlings. We're about to get to the breathing part, y'all. Communication has two sides. As in what someone has communicated may have to be forgiven. So what somebody may have communicated to us might have to be forgiven. I know, right? I've been coughing lately, and yeah, so I think it's allergies and sinuses. And I walked today. I walked across down to the port side. So I was out there in it. So communication has two sides, and what someone has communicated may have to be forgiven, and forgiveness needs to be communicated also. So this is why communication is so important. Are you still here, Kim? Oh, I'll keep warm. It's hot down here. It's hot down here. So communication has two sides, and what someone, all right, my girl. So communication has two sides, and what someone has communicated may have to be forgiven, and forgiveness needs to be communicated also, because we were talking about communication, especially for you. So the reality is that there's tonality, and the tone can be learned, passive aggressive, or it can be loving boundaries. So processing and forgiving ourselves gives us the compassion to humanize ourselves and be in touch with our expectations and honor ours and others' feelings. Forgiveness does not mean going back to the same behavior that's being forgiven, because sometimes you cannot. I had to learn that myself, that because I would go back to the same behavior when I forgave. I thought forgiveness meant going back, saying I forgive them. Your tone needs work. My bark needs work tonight, like Robbie was saying. So forgiveness is not going back to the same behaviors. If you had a partner that did something that was mean or that you can't tolerate and they're not working on themselves, that's a deal breaker. Forgiveness doesn't mean going back to that old partner, just like the old boyfriend and the ex-husband that I have. It doesn't mean that I go back to them because I forgive them and I forgive myself, because I chose them, and it wasn't bad that I chose them. It wasn't. They were catalysts for my growth. So they're not a villain because I chose them. And I'm not a victim because I healed. And I might have hurt them too. In fact, I know that I did. So there's that. Not on purpose, but when I didn't go back, it hurt them. So forgiveness does not mean going back to the same behavior that's being forgiven. Sometimes you can't. Empowerment is learning to trust yourself. You may never be able to trust someone else, but until you learn to trust yourself, you will carry the lack of trust with you, and it may result in you trying to fix someone else with your pain and perception of guilt or innocence in it, because the hurt doesn't just go away. We can process it now or process it later, but we will in most cases process it. Yes, they do forgive everything because they're fear of abandonment. They don't want other people to feel abandoned, so they get back in the ring and subject themselves to some more pain until they don't. That's right, Angela. So when you can process and forgive yourselves, you can start learning more words and raise your soul to the light of freedom and trust yourself to express without second-guessing yourself. You will realize life is too short to hold grudges, and that loving, healthy boundaries done with your secure words will lessen the said grudges. That comes with processing your fears and pain with someone and not your partner. Not your partner. Your partner cannot fix you. They cannot fix you. You have to fix yourself. You cannot fix somebody else. They have to fix themselves. That's codependent too, right, Angela? So That comes with processing your fears and pain and not your partner. They can't fix you. Okay, so sometimes talk about the big girl and big boy words. I had to learn mine. My inner child did not have them. I had to learn them without shoulds and blame. Just learn. It's fun. So when I learned I didn't have to know everything to appear smart, that was a relief. I am smart and I have nothing to prove, and you are too. So in summary, before we do our breathing, in summary, forgiveness, compassion, and communication. This message explores how unhealed emotional wounds, especially from childhood, can shape the way we respond to pain, conflict, and forgiveness in the relationships. It explains that many people have unconsciously punished others through silence, withdrawal, passive aggressive behavior, or emotional distance, even after an apology or a change in behavior has happened. Hi, Judela and Rodolfo. I don't know. Did you? So we're also emphasizing here that forgiveness is not about excusing harmful behavior, having copying mechanisms like addictions as a way to ignore the violations. Yes, it is. It sure is. No, I have not heard from John London, Robbie, and I miss him. Don't you? I haven't seen him on here the past couple of sessions either. So I don't know what's going on with John London. I've not seen him. Maybe he'll be back Sunday. So we're talking about forgiveness is not bad. It's not about excusing harmful behavior or returning to unhealthy situations. Ramon, and I'm almost done. We're in the summary here. I do miss him too, and I hope he's okay. Glad you're here, Ramon. So this writing emphasizes that forgiveness is not about excusing harmful behavior or returning to unhealthy situations. Instead, forgiveness is about freeing yourself from the emotional weight of pain, resentment, shame, and unresolved trauma. True healing requires self-awareness, accountability, emotional processing, and honest communication. We also talked about the difference between simply saying I'm sorry and making meaningful amends through changed behavior, accountability, therapy, coaching, recovery work, or self-reflection. Compassion begins when we stop making everything about them and start understanding our own triggers, nervous system responses, fears, and unmet emotional needs. Oh, you've been here. Well, thank you for saying hello. Was it helpful? So communication is described as a learned skill that many people were never taught. You know, we have to learn how to communicate. You're never too old, it's never too late. Healthy communication requires emotional regulation, curiosity, boundaries, honesty, and the courage to express feelings without blame or manipulation. Healing comes when we learn to trust ourselves, process pain instead of reacting from it, and communicate from self-awareness rather than wounded survival patterns. Thanks. Survival pills. I used to have survival pills. Thank you. All right. Well, I've got 3 tips for forgiveness. Here we grow. Here we grow. 1, forgive yourself first. Are you still here, Rodolfo? Forgive yourself first. Many people carry shame, guilt, or self-blame long after the painful experiences. Self-forgiveness allows healing and freedom from old emotional patterns. Do you remember why you put narcissist on a pedestal as a codependent, Stacy? What supply did you give them? Oh, he was smart. He's still very smart. He was a very smart man. He was smart, but he had to prove he was smart all the time because his brother was a genius, and that's why he was a narcissist, because his brother was a genius. So his brother got all the attention because he was a genius. And so he had to always prove that he was smart, and he was. He worked very hard to be smart. And so my wound was that I didn't feel smart enough, so it made me feel smarter for somebody smart to accept me, right? So that's we're always mirroring. This is what y'all hear me talking about, projecting and mirroring. That's what we're doing. That's what I was doing with him, and that was one of the things. He was a nice looking man. That was the first thing that attracted me to him, was he was nice looking, you know. But he was also very smart, and he was very generous because he was love bombing. Flying Brian. There's Flying Brian, Robbie. There's Flying Brian. We're missing John London. But it's good to see you, Flying Brian. I'm glad you made it. We're just at the end here. Thank you, Angela. I learned that I am smart, but I had to learn that it was inside of me. I kept looking for love outside of me, or to prove that I'm worthy of love, to prove these things. And I had to learn that it's all here. I have nothing to prove. That nice looking smart got you too. Well, you have love. He has love. Y'all got love. I love love. So thank you for your questions, Angela. Those are some good questions, and thank you for that too, that compliment. It's nice to be able to catch you too. So, many people carry shame, guilt, or self-blame long after painful experience. Self-forgiveness allows you healing and freedom from emotional patterns. So 2, look for changed behavior, not just words. A true apology includes accountability and action. Growth is shown through consistent effort, healing work, and behavioral change. 3, 3, I see that, Ramon. Shh. Fine, Brian, Robbie, all good in the hood, brother. Yeah, Angela. Oh, you're very well. Welcome. Thank you, Angela. So 3 is stop punishing through silence. Passive aggressive behavior and emotional withdrawal keep pain alive. Honest conversations create more healing than silent resentment. 3, tips for compassion. 1, remember everyone has wounds. People often react from pain, fear, insecurity, or poor coping skills, not because your worth is lacking. Your ex reminds a bit like my selfish, handsome, smart. Trying to prove it, right, Robbie? Sometimes we're trying to prove something. So 1, remember everyone has wounds. People often react from pain, fear, insecurity, or poor coping skills, not because your worth is lacking. If I don't find my handsome man, hopefully he's at least handy. Yeah. I probably am not going to till I get to Spain, y'all. That's the truth. That's the truth. And it's probably not until I get to Spain. I was kind of supposed to have a date today, but we were supposed to go to coffee, and then we didn't go to coffee. He wanted to come to my house. I'm like, oh, no, you don't, no, I don't know you. You do not get to come to my house. I don't let people who I don't know come to my house. So, needless to say, we didn't have coffee. He might have been a serial killer or something. I do watch all those 48 hours. Or he had a girlfriend and didn't want to be seen out in public because he wasn't, So, anyway, probably not until I get to Spain. So, 2, humanize yourself and others. You're not perfect, and neither are they. Compassion grows when we stop seeing mistakes as proof of failure. Okay. 3, stop slowing down. What? Yes. Absolutely, absolutely. I don't know who folks think they are to think they can just come over to my house. I have to know if I'm gonna like them first, if they're good. I'm very private. Private. It's like, no, y'all be coming up in my space, and when I'm not wanting, no. Did I say humanize? Okay. Humanize yourself. You're not perfect, and neither are they. Compassion grows when we stop seeing mistakes as a proof of failure. 3, slow down before reacting. When the nervous system is overwhelmed, we jump to conclusions. Breathing, pausing, and processing emotions helps prevent regretful reactions. 3, tips for communication. 1, use clear big boy and big girl words, not your inner child lashing out. Speak directly your wants, needs, boundaries, and feelings instead of expecting others to guess. 2, communicate from regulation and not reaction. Calm communication creates connection. Reactive communication often creates more damage and misunderstanding. That's right. My house is my castle, and I'm very protective of my castle. One thing our throwing places is public. One thing is that, what was I going to say? Oh, when I did leave that narcissist, Angela, the thing that I had with the axes, no throwing axes anywhere, not in private or in public. But that was what I wanted, was peace. I could have a lot of material things with a narcissist, but really what I wanted was peace. And so I value my peace a lot, and I ain't about to try to give up my peace over here. No. 2, communicate from regulation and not reaction. Calm communication creates connection. Reactive communication often creates more damage and misunderstanding. 3, replace blame with curiosity. Instead of assuming intent, ask questions and seek understanding. Curiosity builds trust and emotional safety. All right. I hope that this was helpful for everyone tonight, and that you're able to take, a few things away with that today. And then we're going to have story time with Stacy, same time on Sunday. My morning schedules are still the same. It's still 9 a.m. on Wednesday and Sunday for the morning schedules. But the evening schedules have moved up an hour to 6 p.m. Central Standard. Both of those are Central Standard Time. I know a piece of them at first with those narcissists. Right? You are very welcome, Angela. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your questions. I always love for y'all to participate, and I thank y'all so much for participating. Hello, Pam. Okay. All right. Yes. See, Pam is like 3 hours behind me, y'all. So, yeah. So at least you got on here in time to breathe with us, Pam. You're going to have to breathe with us. Oh, I didn't breathe on Facebook this morning, did I? Rodolfo, was this helpful, darling? Rodolfo, I hope that it was helpful, and it's always good to see you here. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I appreciate your comments also. You're packing to go to the beach. All right, very good. Are you going to breathe with? You're not going to breathe with us, Rodolfo? Blind Brian. Thanks for sharing your time and experience. Always a treat to see you in the group. It's always a treat to see you too, Flying Brian. I'm glad that you could jump in here. All right, Rodolfo, thank you. Angela, yes, you did catch me. We're about to do the breathing. So if y'all get a chance to listen to the replay, I hope that you will. Good evening, Porky the Booty Bandit. Robbie. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Robbie. You caught at least the summary. Okay. Well, thank you. All right, Rodolfo, I'm glad you're going to breathe with us, because just imagine that we're all breathing together. Wouldn't that be really cool? Because we are all breathing together. So just know we are all breathing together, and what an amazing gift that breath is. All right, so let's do this. Let's take a deep breath in. Hold it. Release. Breathe. Hold it. Release. Breathe in. Hold it. Release. Just 2 more. Breathe in. Hold it. Release. Last one. Breathe in. Hold it. Release. Alrighty. Well, thank you. Who? Librarian. You've been called worse. I missed something. Hey, Angelia. I'm so glad that you made it. Angela, I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you so much. I am getting tired. Be not. I'm good today, but we're done. We're done. We're saying our good nights. Robbie, you're gonna get to go back to sleep. Angela, thank you so much for being here. I always appreciate your input. There's Angelia. It's okay. It's okay, Angelia. So I knew I seen an Angelia and an Angela, and yeah, you're not gonna get to go back to sleep. What time is it in Aussie land? So yeah, Robbie's always ahead of us, y'all. Fun, Brian. That's what she was talking to. Okay, yeah, spell correct. Must have corrected it. Hello, Benny Eggs. Thank you. Be not. I'm good today. We're just almost done. I'm coming on here an hour now. You are very welcome, Angela. Ramon, you have a good night too. Thank you. I'm glad you were here. Oh, okay. Well, thank you for sharing with Angelia. So I come on here at 6 Central Standard Time, and it's 7. Is that 7 for Angelia? But it's like 3, 4 for you, right, Pam? Good night, Kim. You are very welcome. All right, y'all. I love y'all. Thank y'all so much for being here. I look forward to seeing you Sunday. Ramon. That's funny. I look forward to seeing y'all Sunday for story time with Stacy at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. Okay? All right. Thank y'all. Y'all have a good night. All right. Bye. I even added you to my calendar. Yes, 3 hours less than Eastern Standard, but 2 hours less than Central. Okay. All righty then. All right, y'all, if you haven't subscribed to Manjaro Journey with Pam, I encourage you to, especially if you're on a journey, with like weight loss and you think you got to go to a gym. You don't got to go to a gym. She gives you some good, her 50, and every day, that's her daily 50 is really awesome. And it's, something you could do at your work and things like this. So you are very welcome. All right. Well, I just love this community, and I thank y'all so much for being here tonight. And Angelia, maybe you can catch me Sunday if you're not in the church at 9 a.m. But if you are, then Monday night I'll be back on here. And I know y'all have the holidays in America, so happy holiday, okay? All right. See y'all Sunday if you can be here. Bye.